Thank you, Mr. President, and let me first thank Senator Shelby and Senator Mikulski for their really hard work on this omnibus appropriations bill, and that's what I'm down here to speak on. The American people sent us here to make choices, sometimes very tough choices. They don't expect perfection, but they do expect us to be fair and to get the job done. Americans are tired of shutdowns, of sequestration, of stopgap funding. And today we are making decisions we were sent here to make. The annual appropriations process is the right way to do the people's business. Instead of kicking the can and passing the buck, lurching from crisis to crisis, I think we are making some significant progress. This was my first year on the Appropriations Committee, and I especially want to thank Chairman Mikulski for her leadership, her unfailing support, and for doing such an amazing job. She once said, "It's not how long I serve, but how well I serve." Senator Mikulski has proven once again on both counts she is truly exceptional. This bill returns some sanity to the budget process in Washington, and I'm pleased that for the most part it does well by New Mexico. New Mexico plays a unique role in our nation's national security. This bill provides strong funding levels for safety and security of our nation's nuclear deterrent, including the important B-61 project at Sandia National Labs. The President's request of $537 million is fully funded. The highly qualified employees at Sandia will continue their vital mission, making sure these weapons are managed safely and securely. This is not something we should shortchange. This bill also provides equally important funding for Los Alamos National Laboratory in northern New Mexico. The workforce there has been reduced in recent years. This bill will stabilize things for 2014. Both of these labs are critical for nuclear security, but they are much more than that. They are also engines for innovation in aerospace, biotech, cybersecurity, and new energy technology. New Mexico is proud to host both of these labs, but the Department of Energy also has an obligation to our states and other states on legacy cleanup. The funding levels do not fully meet our request, but they do provide strong increases over 2013 for cleanup at Los Alamos and at the Waste Isolation Pilot Project in Carlsbad, New Mexico. These cleanup activities are a serious obligation of the federal government and are a source of skilled, well-paid jobs for many New Mexico families. New Mexico is also home to 3 Air Force bases and the Army's White Sands Missile Range. This bill contains nearly $150 million in construction and infrastructure projects, including $60 million for a TRICARE facility at Holloman Air Force Base. These projects will benefit national security, they will create jobs, and will meet our obligations to the men and women who are serving their country. The federal government also plays a very important role in New Mexico's water infrastructure. We are an arid western state. Prudent water management is crucial for our economy. We cannot afford the waste that comes from neglected infrastructure. This bill contains over $120 million in funding for federal water assets in our state and includes the Navajo-Gallup Pipeline and the Middle Rio Grande project. We've been struggling with intense drought. Rural areas and small towns in particular have been deeply affected. Some small communities are seeing their wells run dry. They need help, and they need it now. The $1.7 billion in the USDA Rural Development Water Funding is absolutely essential. This historic drought requires that we rethink how we use water throughout the West. We need to be smart about our strategy, and we need strategies that work for individual communities. That's why I advocated for greater funding for the Water Smart grants. helping local governments and water districts improve water efficiency. The conference report promotes an innovative drought water sharing arrangement along the Rio Grande, where we are facing difficult trade-offs between agriculture, the environment, and urban users. This bill also meets our obligations to our nation's veterans. The backlog at the VA is unacceptable. Frankly, it's an outrage. No veteran should wait a year or more on their claim. This bill funds a 10-part plan to resolve this problem, improving IT infrastructure, better training, and hiring additional personnel. We dedicated $250 million specifically to carry out the VA's Rural Health Initiative to ensure that veterans in rural and remote areas are not left behind. Utilizing telehealth solutions and mobile clinics, bringing veterans the care they deserve without long drives. I will keep fighting for veterans in New Mexico, including those in rural areas, making sure they have access to the health care they have earned. Many veterans are understandably upset with the recent change in the COLA for working-age military retirees. And I'm outraged too. This cut was included in the recent two-year budget agreement passed in December. I did not support this provision, and I'm working hard to repeal it. Thankfully, this bill ensures disabled veterans and spousal benefits will not be subject to the cut. Congress has the rest of 2014 to do the right thing. We need to fix this mistake for good for all veterans. This year, I had the privilege to chair the Appropriations Subcommittee on Financial Services and General Government. I'm proud of the work we have done to safeguard our financial system, to protect consumers, to support job creation, and to strengthen our federal courts. The bill provides $112 million for the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, fighting terrorist financing, money laundering, narcotics trafficking, and other illicit financial activity. To protect the public and consumers, the bill fully funds three key agencies. For the CPSC, $118 million to help protect the public against risk from injury of consumer products. For the FTC, $298 million to combat consumer fraud, fight identity theft, and promote consumer privacy. For the FCC, $340 million to maintain robust networks for emergency communications, political debate, social interaction, and business transactions. To support job creation, the bill provides $929 million for the Small Business Administration. It also supports the Small Business Development Centers to provide critical guidance to small businesses and emerging entrepreneurs. The bill supports community development in underserved areas, including tribal nations, providing $226 million for the CDFI fund. For the federal courts, the bill provides a much-needed increase, $6.5 billion in discretionary funding, 5% above the fiscal year level of 2013. Budget cuts had forced the courts to downsize and furlough staff. This bill provides the judiciary the staffing and resources it needs for court offices, probation, and pretrial services, and in particular, federal defender offices will be adequately staffed. The bill also calls for significant investments in the government's capital projects. For the first time in 3 years, it provides the General Services Administration a total of $1.653 billion for construction and repair of federal buildings and courthouses. I would like to thank my ranking member, Senator Johans, for his efforts this year. He was friendly, honest, and straightforward, and it has been a real privilege to work with him. Finally, I must thank our subcommittee staff, Mary Ann Upton, Diana Hamilton, Emily Sharp, and like all the committee staff, they have spent time over the holidays, on weekends, and uncounted long hours to help complete the final bill. Now, in closing, I'm very happy to be here talking about the good work of the Appropriations Committee and that good work that has been produced in this bill that's before us for New Mexico and for the nation. But I must mention one problem that remains, and it's a great concern for many of us from the West. Funding for the Payment in Lieu of Taxes program, known as PILT, has expired. These funds compensate counties in New Mexico and throughout the country where the federal government owns a good deal of land, land that cannot be taxed, cannot be developed, cannot be used to help pay for services like roads and schools and public health and public safety. PILT is a lifeline to my constituents in many rural communities in New Mexico. I joined with my friend, Senator Enzi of Wyoming, urging that this crucial funding be included in this bill. Unfortunately, it was not. I realize that PILT has not been in the appropriations bill for several years. In fact, it is preferable for it to receive mandatory long-term funding. But we must find a solution, and we must find that solution soon. I'm calling for PILT to be included in the upcoming Farm Bill Conference report. It's a common-sense solution to this very real problem. PILT is a long-term funding program. Our rural communities across the West need consistency. They need to be able to plan for long-term projects. Mandatory long-term funding is the only real solution. I hope that my colleagues will work with me on this. And with that, I would urge all of my colleagues to vote yes on the Omnibus Appropriations Bill